5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
OffTheRopes.com. What's your legacy?
Hi, and thanks for joining me for the Off the Ropes podcast. I'm Victoria, and I'll be presenting a weekly show bringing you some of the world's most inspiring individuals, but not just those who have achieved enormous success, specifically those who have endured hardship and adversity and overcame their challenges. Plus, I'll be speaking with experts in the field of nutrition, health, fitness, and personal development to extract their wisdom on how to optimize your performance, fulfill your potential, and learn how to get your life off the ropes. I had no qualms in coming up with the name of our first podcast guest, for he epitomizes the entire ethos behind Off the Ropes. He was once described as Britain's hardest man who talked for Chuck Norris and was even asked by Reggie Kray to be his personal bodyguard. Yet despite a background punctured with sexual abuse, extreme violence and depression, he became a Times best-selling author, playwright, filmmaker, mentor and BAFTA-winning screenwriter. Let's meet Jeff Thompson. Jeff, your personal journey is extraordinary and your determination admirable. From factory floor sweeper to BAFTA winner, what motivated you to seek a life way beyond your comfort zone?
Curiosity for me and hunger and dissatisfaction. You know, till the age of 32, I was still working in factories, but just knew there was something else. Just sensed there was more. Every time I tried to go towards the things I really wanted to experience, you know, wanted to write, I wanted to teach. Every time I tried to do that, I had this overwhelming feeling of doubt and fear, and even depression. You know, just I think it was all of my old social scripts, all of the social mores, all of the influences around me were just saying it's not possible, it's not probable. And people like us can't do that. We just can't do it. Don't get above yourself. I was actually attacked for thinking about it, not just by the people around me, but by my own internal monologue. Okay. So I recognised that I was existing in a state or a frequency or in a bandwidth, and everybody within that didn't believe that people within that bandwidth could get out and do other things. They could see other people doing it, but it was always about us and them. Yeah. So I was curious. I knew it was possible. I just knew. I innately knew it was possible, but I was too scared to do it. Every time I tried to do it, I would be debilitated by fear. And I realized eventually that in order for me to exit one state and go into another, I had to go through this barrier of fear, this line of fear. It's almost like you're going out of orbit and you're having to go through a whole kind of meteor belt of difficulty. Mm-hmm. So I recognised that I was in a state, in a frequency, and that I had to exit that. So it wasn't just a matter of changing jobs or changing locations. It was actually changing state. The reason it was difficult to change state was because when you change state, you leave everybody behind who was in that state. Of course. Because they're in a different state. Yeah. So it's like you've gone from Radio Mercia to Radio 4. Radio Mercia is still there, but you know you're on Radio 4, so you're not accessing any of that frequency. So that was where the terror was, really. If I'm successful, how's that going to affect my wife? How's it going to affect my kids? How does it affect my friends if I suddenly go from being Jeff the factory worker to Jeff the published author, appearing live on morning TV with Richard and Judy? You know, will I wake up next to my wife and think she's, you know, because she's married one Jeff, is she going to like the new Jeff? Am I going to like the person that I'm lying next to? Because I'm aware that when she met me, I was in a certain state.
Did you ask them? Or was this all internal conflict? Did you discuss this with your friends and family and say, this is what I want to do? What do you think?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to be a writer, but the people thought I was pretentious. They thought I was above myself. Mm-hmm. I thought I was up my own arse. I thought it was, people would say things like, you know, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
I remember when I first got published, I said to a friend of mine who's a policeman, I said, I'm really excited because I've got this book published and I really think I might be able to make a living at this. And he just scoffed at me and he just said, listen, Jeff, you've had a bit of luck. So, but don't get above yourself. Crikey, what's wrong with you? Yeah. And I said, yeah, you're right. Yeah, what's the matter with me? And then I walked away and I thought, no, he's not right. I've got proof. I've got proof that it was possible. So it's possible, the Swamis and the Sufis call it mastering state. So it's possible to change states, absolutely and unequivocally. But to do it, you have to go through that meteor belt of old scripts and old beliefs. And that's difficult because that might mean confronting your dad. It might mean confronting your wife. It might mean confronting your husband. It might mean confronting someone that abused you when you was a kid. It might mean going against all of your teachers, because all of your teachers, of course, are in that state as well. And they're all saying to you, you know, they're all kind of, and it's not judge. I'm not judging them, but they were really just training you to go into the factory. So when you go to the careers guys and they say, what do you want to do? And you say, I want to be a writer. They just laugh and say, no, I mean, what would you really want to do?
Absolutely.
This is the time to be realistic.
Yeah.
Childish dreams need to go away, but they're not childish dreams. These are realistic ambitions. They're realistic achievements. But I know why people don't do it.
And why was it so difficult for you, Jeff?
I had to let go of everybody, trusting that some of them would come through. Because when you change states and you break through that barrier, some people do follow you and some people do come with you. And you just trust that the people that are meant to come with you will come with you. And the people that don't just look at you like you're a ghost. It's very strange.
So did you fall out with people? You physically actually said, we can't be friends anymore if you're not going to support me? Or did you just pull away and hope that they'd come with you on your personal journey?
I realised in the end that you can't, there's no help. When I say there's no help, there's no, you know, we've got carnate teachers and we've got discarnate teachers. We've got people that are visible in our life that may help us and people that are invisible. And I just recognised that there isn't any help really other than you actually stepping forward and doing it. And when you do it, help comes. The help will come either visibly or invisibly. So you just have to do it. You have to go through on your own. There's no doubt about that. But some people do. Some people fall away and they attack you as they fall away, and other people just rise up out of nowhere. People that you thought were teachers, you realise are saboteurs, and other people that you thought were just acquaintances become great teachers. It's weird. The whole of reality changes. It's a very beautiful and special experience, but there's a lot of fear there, and the fear is to do with recognising that in order to bring in divinity, we have to create a vacuum. So we have to let go of lots and lots of things, and that's where the discomfort is.
But how do you physically actually get past discomfort, or how do you learn to live with discomfort? Because we are actually taught discomfort is bad. If it feels wrong, don't do it. But it's actually the opposite is true, isn't it? Sometimes if it feels wrong, you should be doing it. Why is that?
It's because of all of our beliefs and scripts. You know, if you've been taught certain things, you know, and it's on your consciousness. So if you imagine that your internal parent is how you see the world. So what Freud would call the superego or the internal parent. Everything we know is what we've been taught from the ages of 1 to 6, and after that, everything is just reaffirmed and confirmed. So. If we're told at an early age that something is wrong and we go to do it, we will automatically feel fear and pain because what we've been told is actually reality to us. It's a belief. If my mum's told me something or my teacher's told me something and I'm in a hypnagogic state, in other words, I'm hypnotized, I don't question it or challenge it. I just allow it to go in and it sits on my cognition, or it becomes a cognition. It sits on my mind, on my hard drive as cognition.
Hard drive, yeah.
That becomes a real belief. So if we're told from the day we're born that you're going to work in a factory, or it may not be told, but it's implicit, and that's a safe job, and that it's a job for life, and that if you're not in the faction, if you haven't got a job, you're out of the tribe. And if you challenge the social mores, you are out of the tribe. That's terror. I mean, the psychologist would say that was akin to climbing out of a dugout with a bayonet and a rifle and dashing into no man's land. It's actually, the fear is so real that I've known lots of people try to exit these states and end up either having breakdowns or committing suicide. It's not something that you take lightly, and it's not something, I don't judge people if they don't change state. But so if you're told, like I was implicitly told at the age of 11, that the world couldn't be trusted,
right, that
nobody could be trusted, not even the people you love, especially the people you love. And I was told this implicitly by a man that sexually abused me. Now I loved this guy, I idolized him. So it was so firmly embedded on my hard drive over this night of abuse, that every time I went out into the world and was in a position where I needed to trust somebody, I felt absolute terror. And I didn't trust myself. I'd been taught not to trust myself. I'd been taught not to know who I was. But this belief was so real that every time I challenged it, I felt as though I was going to die. I felt like a huge depression would fall on me, and I felt like I had to just retreat back into the centre, into something safe, something that I knew. And everything around me was confirming that. Everybody was saying, why can't you just be happy? Why can't you just be grateful? So it's not that you're trying to better yourself, it's that you're ungrateful, it's that you're greedy.
Yeah.
And these are all the things that are put on you. So at some point you have to look at your teachers, you have to look at your parents, and you have to kill your parents.
Kill your parents, yeah.
You have to kill the influences. You have to, at some point, you have to challenge all of those things and be prepared to fall out with people. It's not that you choose to fall out with people, but you do choose to say to them, I love you, but I don't believe you.
Yeah.
I love you, but I don't trust what you're saying, because they're just telling you what they've been taught. They've just been telling you what they know. Yeah. And what they know is given to, it's on their hard drive. It's a very real cognition, a very real perception. It's a very strong belief, and it is confirmed and fed every single day by the media, by the social media, by the newspapers, by their friends, by their own internal monologue. 24 hours a day, they're being said, this is reality. This is what reality is. Yeah. So when you just say, I think there's a different reality, you've got to challenge everything and everybody you've ever listened to. And that's why it's difficult. And that's why it creates a lot of pain and a lot of fear. And these people don't teach you this out of badness. They teach you it because it's what they believe. So listen to this. I had this powerful belief that the world couldn't be trusted, and I had an untamed imagination. And I went out and I created a dystopia. I created nightclubs, pubs, bars. I created thousands of fights, thousands of violent situations. I created a really terrible reality with one belief, just with one belief. And this is what's exciting. When I recognized that and I changed that belief, I actually dissolved the same reality that I've created. And then I created the reality that you see now, the reality that I'm talking to the beautiful Victoria Twigg, that I'm on this podcast, that people actually want to ask me my opinion, that I'm spending 8 hours a day writing a monologue for James Cosmo about St. Francis. It's just
beautiful.
I'm living a beautiful life because I challenged the beliefs that were given to me by people I loved. And when you challenge those beliefs, you risk losing the people you love, but you have to risk losing it all. I would say that God, or the omniscient, or the omnipresent, asks for everything, but he doesn't take it. But we have to be prepared to let everything go. So that's what it's really just about changing states. And then once you've changed states and you go into different states, you can traverse the states. I can go to different places and be comfortable. I can be comfortable at Buckingham Palace, or I can be comfortable with my friends in the market cafe, or if I bump into some of my old friends on the door, I can speak that language. I understand the different states. And obviously I'm like everybody else. I'm still working and I'm still learning and I'm still making mistakes every day, but I know how to get in and out of states, and I understand that the pain and the discomfort is not real. Fear is not real. It's an illusion. It's a projection of a perception, of a cognition, and these perceptions and cognitions exist within you, and that means they can be changed if you have the courage to go in and change them. Knowing that when I change a cognition, I might wake up tomorrow morning with a different woman in my bed. I might look at the woman that's in bed with me and I might adore her more, or I might just suddenly think I'm with the wrong person. Or she might look at me and go, he's changed. And that's where the fear comes in.
But fear is just an illusion, isn't it? How do we overcome the discomfort of fear and step forward and pursue our dreams?
I think before people start looking and trying to find what it is they really want to do, they really need to find who it is that they are.
Who they are.
And that's the biggest problem, because you read all of the books and you listen to all the podcasts and they all say do this and do that, but who are they talking to? There's 20 of me in here.
Yeah.
There's 50 of me in here that, I change hats every single day, every single hour. So if you imagine that the ego projects out of the mind as a mediator between the mind and reality. So the ego projects out as an identity for us to be able to negotiate with reality. So we need an ego. And outside of the ego, we manufacture lots of personas, or what the Greeks would call masks. So we might have 20 or 30 different masks that we use in different circumstances. We always think that when we're in each of those masks is so subtle and they change so subtly, we don't even know that they're different personalities. But when you wake up and you're aware of this, you notice very quickly that people have different masks for different circumstances, but they don't know they've got them. Mm-hmm. So they don't know which of those masks they are, and so they think they're the ego, or they think they're one of these personalities. But actually, who you really are exists beyond the masks and beyond the ego. The ego is just a servant for the soul, or for the authentic self. So the idea is that we identify who we are initially by identifying who we're not. I'm not the jealous guy. I'm not the angry guy. I'm not the greedy guy. I'm not the aggressive guy at work. I'm not the guy that fiddles his tax. I'm not the guy that flirts with the office secretary. I'm not the person that's judgmental, or that's throwing my slipper at the television because I don't like what the presenter's saying. I'm none of these people. So what we do is we trace back through who we're not to find out who we are. And of course, when we go back to that, we recognize that the masks all come from the ego. And the ego thinks it's you, absolutely, unequivocally. So the ego thinks it's you, but the ego is not you. If you imagine in a factory, the ego is the manager, but he's not the CEO. But the CEO may have gone off on holiday for a couple of years and he's been gone away so long that the manager thinks he's the CEO.
Yes.
And then the CEO comes back and suddenly says, yeah, I'm taking back over, and the manager or the ego kicks off. So we're not the ego. The ego is the servant to the authentic self. So behind the ego is the authentic self. Mm-hmm. The action of looking at who you're not is very uncomfortable because we have to look at the person that is, full of vice. Yeah. Doing all of the things that we wouldn't want to see in the paper tomorrow. And to protect ourselves from all these personalities, we create lots of buffers, lots of defense mechanisms, Freudian defense mechanisms, like rationalization, denial, projection, reaction formation, where we're attacking others, what we don't like in ourselves, drink, drugs, sex, all the things we do to cover, to hide from who we're not. What I'm saying to people is, let's gently peel back each of those, what Miller Reaper called the 7,000 layers of ego. Let's peel back those layers and start identifying who we're not. And when you start to identify who you're not, you recognize that the person identifying who you're not, or observing who you're not, is the authentic self. So once you've found the authentic self, you won't need to look at what it is you're meant to be doing with your life. You won't have to search for what you're doing, because the authentic self already knows. And interestingly, I meditated before this podcast because I didn't want to come with any of my personalities. I wanted to try and come authentically. And I recognized today, this is what came through for you for this podcast, was that the authentic self isn't an identity. It is a place. It's a place. It's actually, and the place is everywhere. So when you go back to the authentic self, you recognize that you are everywhere and everything. I know that sounds esoteric, but so the authentic self is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. The authentic self is the one breath, is God. So at that point of the authentic self, everything is everything. So it's tracing back through who we're not, and then recognizing that the ego is necessary. We need an ego, but it needs to be what I would call a sentinel ego, an ego that has been elected to negotiate between my authentic self, which is a silent watcher, and reality, because I'm in reality and I'm creating in reality. And then I don't really need personas anymore. I don't need masks. I just have one authentic voice, one authentic ego. And the ego is definitely and always subservient. It's always a servant of this higher center. It's free, but it has freedom under authority. And we need to maintain all the time that the ego remembers that it's a servant, because the ego will always try and grab every single good thing that happens and try and own it. And even, like when they talk about spiritual pride, we start recognizing that people see God through us, and the ego wants to grab hold of that. Oh, that's me. Look at how good I am, and look at how much people like me. Yeah. So, and the personalities, of course, are always trying to find their way back in. You may have ousted them, but they're always trying to find their way back in. They're waiting for a high day or a holiday or a low day or a depression, and these devils or these divided thoughts these personalities will try and come back in again. So it's being vigilant all the time and keeping an eye on that. It's no good trying to find out what it is you're meant to do until you find out who it is you actually are.
How did you get all this knowledge, Jeff? How did you become aware that
you hit a crisis, Victoria? That's what happens. You either hit a crisis or you hit an epiphany. And when you for me, I hit a crisis. I had another of a long series of depressions, and I just thought, I can't be here anymore. I can't have this energy coming in and raping and pillaging, and then wandering off 2 or 3 months later saying, see you again soon, I'll come back, but I'm not sure when, but I will come back.
Absolutely.
So I hit a crisis, and that sent me on this path of learning. I wanted knowledge, not information. As you know, I'm very well read, but that's not what's important. What's important is that I'm very well experienced, and what I've read has just confirmed what I've learned. So knowledge is the essence of experience, where you get the experience and you kind of analyze it and break it all down until you find what is the essence of that. And then when you find the essence of, like, for instance, I became a doorman many years ago to overcome my fear of violent confrontation. Yeah. Okay. And the essence of that experience 25 years on is still filtering through. It was an incredible experience. I found out what reality was. I found out what was real. I found out, as a martial artist, I found out what worked in real situations. And it was so simple, it was insulting. But it was also so simple that this Coventry kid working from a sports centre and working in a cavern, the nightclub I worked in was a cave. It was built inside like a cave, which is interesting because people like Francis and Miller Reaper all found their epiphanies in caves. Right. And I've only just realised this as I'm saying it to you. But when I was there, I was astonished by how simple everything was. It was still frightening, but I was astonished by how simple everything was. How the truth was right in front of us. It was as close as the neck vein. But you only had to scratch below the surface, and the truth was there. But I recognised that everybody was invested in not seeing the truth. Everybody. And you just think maybe some people are invested, but I recognised that everybody was invested in not seeing the truth. I wanted to see the truth because I didn't want to live my life under the dominion of these depressions. Yeah. And the truth was astonishingly simple. So once I did that on the door and I recognised what the truth was of, say, physical self-defence, I was able to go into other areas and find the truth there as well. And of course, ultimately, go into myself and access the truth and locate who I actually was. And like I said, and I did that by looking in the mirror and just tracing back through all of the people I wasn't. And they were, these people that I wasn't, they weren't hard to find. They were ostentatious. they were wearing lots of heavy jewelry, and they were violent, and they were insecure, and they were greedy. They weren't hard to find. But people didn't want to tell me about these people who I wasn't, because if they told me who I wasn't, they'd have to recognise who they weren't as well. So I had to go on this search myself, and it was enlightening but very jarring at times as well.
So you actually, because you were so fearful, you actually chose to confront fear by working on a door.
Yeah, I know.
It's so ironic, because well, I'm sure there are lots of other things you could have done which are scarier, but that's pretty scary to do that in a Coventry nightclub, isn't it? Because I imagine at times that was pretty hairy on a...
Yeah, well, four of my friends were murdered during that time. It was a real threat. But I built myself up. I built a fear pyramid, and I wrote down all the things I was afraid of on each step of the pyramid in ascending order. Least fear at the bottom step, worst fear at the top step. And then I gradually built myself up and recognised ultimately that I was afraid of violent confrontations. But I recognised ultimately that I was really frightened of myself. I was frightened because I didn't know myself. Yeah. And when I was alone in the dark on my own, Victoria, I didn't trust my own hands. Mm-hmm. So I was ultimately afraid of me. And then when I examined and went deeply into myself, I recognised that it wasn't me, it was my scripts, or I was possessed. Mm-hmm. I was possessed by other people's beliefs, other people's cognitions, other people's perceptions. Yeah. I was possessed by the information I'd been born with and the information that I'd been taught from a very early age by people that I really loved. So I had to exorcise all of these old cognitions. I had to basically wipe the hard drive clean and start again. Mm-hmm. And that takes time. When you said earlier on, it takes a lifetime. I'm sensing that it takes several lifetimes.
How much do you think the internal troubles that you've had began with the abuse? Did it start before then, or was that kind of the pivotal moment where things actually started to go bad for you? Do you trace the aggression back to that point and your mistrust of the world because of that?
I trace it back to that, yeah. But I would say that I was born with my parents' karma, and I was born with my grandparents' karma, and I was born with all of my lineage. Of course, that's obvious. We carry the karma for our ancestors. We're born with it. It's in us. When they say we're born into sin, we literally are. We're born into. They call it the genetic inheritance. We have all of the stuff brought forward from them. So we have all of those traits, but they can be changed. That's the exciting thing. Even genetics can be changed. We can, because all of the stuff that rises up in us, all the scripts, the old scripts that we're born with and the scripts that we've learned, they have no reality until they're engaged at the level of consciousness. So when we engage them, we give them life. If we start to recognize that these are just scripts and that they are old beliefs and they are old perceptions and cognitions, when they rise up to be engaged, that's when we talk about the internal jihad, we can refrain from engaging them. If we're conscious, if we have consciousness and we're aware that I don't want these scripts and these feelings, I don't believe them and I don't trust them, I want better cognitions, we can deny them reality by refusing to engage them at the level of consciousness. So that's where the war takes place. The Mahabharata, the war field, is at the level of engagement. So I learned to not engage the things I didn't want, and that was difficult sometimes because some of them were very pleasurable, but they left me in an abyss. And I learned to start engaging the things I did want to engage. So there's an old saying in the New Testament, and when Jesus says you can't put new wine into old caskets, he's really just talking about cognitions. He's saying that you can't put a new belief into an old belief. You have to disprove the old belief. You can do this through cognitive behavioral therapy or just by contemplation. I think they call it Bhakti yoga, which is this idea of the yoga of action. We actually go out and do stuff. We don't just change our intellect. We actually go out and do stuff. So we can't put new beliefs into. If you've got a pocket of belief and that's a cognition, you can't put a new belief in that. You have to deny the old belief. and you have to get rid of that, and then you create a brand new cognition. And the moment you do that, the moment you get rid of an old belief by disproving it, you automatically create a vacuum that pulls in this new cognition, this new belief. So there's a continual battle of getting rid of old cognitions and creating new cognitions. And of course, the best way to see that, the best way to identify that, is to go towards the things that you secretly want to do. So if you want to be a writer, if you don't really know who you are, but you think, well, I want to be a writer, go towards that. And who you're not will present itself and say, you can't do that because what will your mum think about what you've written? What will your friends think about what you've written? What if it, so who you're not will present itself. Mm-hmm. And when it presents itself to be engaged, you either engage it or you deny it. And if you don't engage it, then it eventually will dissipate. Yeah. And the energy that's locked inside of that old belief, the belief will be liberated, and the energy that's locked inside the belief will come over to you. It'll expand your authentic self. So we'll just keep heading towards what it is you want to do. And these old beliefs will fire into you. They'll fire into you as internal dialogues, or they'll fire into you as external dialogues with the people around you who will say things like, are you sure you want to do that? Do you really, who are you to do that? Do you know what the chances are of getting published? My brother actually said to me, are you sure you want to publish this book, my first book? Mm-hmm. And I said, why? He says, because you're so vulnerable in it. You make yourself so vulnerable. And I said, well, what's the point of writing a book if I'm not going to be vulnerable? How will it help people if I'm not honest? But people around you are afraid by proxy. Yeah, so we're coming back to what we said about who are you? Mm-hmm. And the job first is to find out who you are. All the other stuff that you read is just entry level. Okay. It's no good having 50 techniques if you don't know who you are. So we put ourselves, what we do is, if we can, we place ourselves. I think the world is a holographic environment created in order for us to clean up old karma. Wow. It's like a huge sarcophagus where we just kind of clean up old shit. But what I did in my training when I was teaching people is I would create confrontational environments for people. I would manufacture them and create them within the training arena to allow them to identify who they were not. So you've got people in the class say, this is a fighting class. So we would create a very uncomfortable environment. We would call it Animal Day, where anything goes, all the rules go out the window, and you suddenly find out who you are and you find out what works. The truth presents itself really quickly. So I wouldn't be interested in working, say, with, John Smith, who presents himself at my class. I'm interested in working with who comes forward when John Smith's under pressure. Yeah. Who comes forward when John Smith's faced by somebody who can fight better. Or if it was a different environment, if it was a work environment, people talk about they're saying they're working with different people and people are difficult. But that's when I had my karate class, we had one particular guy who was really difficult for everybody. And a few of the students come up to me and said, we don't like this guy in our class. Right. He's uncomfortable. He's aggressive. He hurts us when we're training. And I said, you know what my problem is? My problem is that we haven't got 10 of him in our class. We need people like that because they make it real for us. Mm-hmm. You learn a lot then. So the growth is in the discomfort. So we're in a kind of an illusory environment. The world is maya, or it's illusion. We use the situations like a poultice to draw out who we're not. And when we've drawn out who we're not, we're left with who we are.
And that sounds mentally exhausting, Jeff. What do you do to sustain your focus?
I know that I can't do it on my own. I'm in a fragile body. So I click into the mains electric every single day. I do yoga. Mm-hmm. I meditate probably 3 times a day. I'm talking to you now. This is meditation for me. The writing I do is meditation. So I make sure that I recognize, first of all, that my ego can't sustain it. And the personalities will collapse under the pressure of any kind of challenge. I bring through God or essence. So I connect to that. Every single day. And I do that through yoga. I do it through correct palate. I do it through deep meditation. And I do it through study as well. I study a lot. So I've placed myself around all of the things that feed my authentic self, and I avoid all of the things that feed my false ego or feed my personalities. So it's a continual practice, but it sounds like it's arduous, but believe me, I absolutely love my life. I laugh every single day. I have moments of bliss every single day. It's one of those things when it only feels intimidating when you're on the outside of it. When you're in it, it's exhilarating.
So were you saying that if you want to go on and achieve something, you've also got to master all the other vices in your life first?
For me, yeah, because, I'm not interested in making £1 billion or winning an Oscar, but that might be part of my path, but that's not what I'm interested in, because that would be thinking too small. I'm interested in working from my soul. I'm interested in giving my soul or my authentic identity residence in my body. So, because you can see people in the world who break all of the vices and are physically and materially very successful.
Yes, you do.
But you can be very successful in the world and still be a spiritual criminal.
Absolutely.
You can do. I know people who are ultra successful, but they're not working on their soul at all, and they're not in a place that they enjoy or in a place they love, and they don't like themselves and they don't trust themselves. I mean, what's the point of £500 million if you've got a cocaine addiction and 3 mistresses?
Indeed.
And you don't even trust your own hands. So for me, the only reason I do the external stuff, and bearing in mind esoterically, the external and the internal are not really different, but the only reason I would do the stuff that seems as though it's on the outside is to put myself into an environment that will flush out any old shadows. So I just did a TED Talk, and the TED Talk pushed every button for me, because it was asking me to not just turn up and do a talk, which I can do. It was asking me to write a talk, memorize a talk, and then do a talk, bring everything I've learned over the last 56 years, or everything I've learned through all of my generations, all of the stuff that's come through me, and put it into a 15-minute talk, and then go out. And the my message in the talk is about forgiving a paedophile, and trying to explain that forgiveness is about exorcism. It's not about letting somebody off. So it pressed all of my buttons. So you're going global with the talk, and you're in front of a live audience, and it's memorized. So it's really like you're going on stage and you're acting rather than just ad-libbing. So that environment for me wasn't so much about the fact that the talk is going to go out. That's secondary. And if the talk is successful, that's secondary. What was important for me was that the environment forced me to work in an area where I'm not comfortable. It took all of my comfort away. It made me uncomfortable for 3 months, about 100 hours of practice, and allowed me to see elements of myself or residues of my old self that are not me, that are not serving me. I've got to create a complete vacuum if I want to bring in divinity. So I put myself into environments like the film we've just done, Romans is another one. I did, and I hope Orlando doesn't mind me saying this, but we did 9 hours of this. He's on it. He is so meticulous with his preparation. So we did a 9-hour script and an analysis. And I was at Orlando's house in London, and you would think that sounds very glamorous. And you know what? All I just kept thinking was, I don't care where I am. I don't care who you are. I just want to go home to my wife. It was fucking so uncomfortable. And not because of him. Nothing to do with him. He was the most charming host. He was lovely. He's been very lovely to all of us. It was the fact that I'm having to sit there, Victoria, for 9 hours, and then with 5 years to prepare the script, then 9 hours of dissecting the script, and then 4 weeks of shooting the script. And that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm actually in an exorcism with people that love me. They're helping me. They're saying, what about this? What about the detail of this? What about the minutiae of this? And this is my life. This is my shadows brought forward. And me having to stand in front of these bent over kind of wart-ridden hags and say, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, that's who I was. So, and I just thought, I just want to go home. I want to run away from this. I don't want people to think that I wasn't scared. I am brave, but I'm scared. I'm scared all the time. So it all sounds glamorous, but I was very, very aware that this environment had been created for me isotopically in order for me to retch out the last of these old shadows. And there's still more to come, obviously, because the film will go out. The film will receive most probably, a polarity of opinions, because some people will get it, some people won't. I mean, it is a beautiful film. It's absolutely beautiful. But so I'm aware that when I'm there, I'm not making a film. Everybody thinks they're making a film. I know I'm not making a film. What I'm doing is I'm identifying through the process of writing, I'm connecting to my soul, and I'm flushing through all of the bits of me that aren't me in order to leave only what is me.
Will your family see the film, Geoff?
I hope not. Probably not. My family, my wife will. Obviously, my wife's involved in all of the writing. She's involved. She types all my stuff out for me. She only ever watches all the films once because she says they kill her. She says, write a comedy, for fuck's sake. Geoff, write a comedy.
Well, actually, I was going to say, for anyone who's not yet seen any of Geoff's films, they'll take a lot from you. I recently watched the Pyramid Text with James Cosmo, and I was just in tears. It's impossible not to watch your stuff without being deeply, deeply affected. So I think I read a review that someone wrote about you, a play you did up at Edinburgh, and said, I think it was Fragile, and said, utterly fantastic, but I do not recommend you watch this.
Yeah.
And it's true, because your stuff stays with you, stays with people long after it's been read or watched. So yeah, so I'm not surprised your family are not going to be in the audience.
They probably, I don't, I love my family, but my mum and my sister and my brother, I have a kind of family relationship with them, but they don't really get involved in my films because,
right,
like most families, they don't want to see all this stuff. They don't want to see me talking about the fact that I was abused. But I'm not talking about it other than for me to clean myself. I have to completely let go of all that. So my kids are massive supporters. My wife is a big supporter. So that side of my family, I've got 3 girls and a boy, and they're hugely supportive, but I don't force it upon anybody else because I don't know whether it would, be good for them or not. But normally, if I've got something that's really harsh, my family are protected from it, and I always ask in my prayers that they're protected from not seeing anything they don't want to see. Because my cleaning is about my cleaning; it's not about their cleaning. I love them unconditionally, and if most of the people, as you know, I mentor some people. I've got about half a dozen people I mentor. But I don't mentor anybody, not anybody that doesn't ask. I don't try and pass it on to people. I don't try and force it on people because it's too difficult. It's difficult enough doing it for yourself. So the films for me is, you could say I'm a writer, and I connect to my soul through the writing. It comes through the nib of my pen, and that's the way I'm able to connect with my soul. That's my religion, my direct link. But I don't see myself as a writer. That's just how I personally express myself. And when I bring this divinity through, it flushes through and it flushes out all of these old.
Yeah, so it's cleansing. It's a cleansing process for you.
Very cleansing, yeah.
Geoff, who's your mentor?
Well, at the moment, all of my mentors are invisible. They're not visible. They're not carnate. They're not. I haven't got any physical mentors that are walking around the world. I've got people I talk to in my meditation, and people that come to me in my meditation. And there's a series of, I would say, ascended teachers, I would say, that come to me. But then when I'm mentoring people, the people I'm mentoring are my teachers. And then when I'm, like I'm talking to you now, and you're my teacher, you're bringing stuff out of me I didn't know and knew. There's a couple of things you've asked, a couple of questions that have brought out things that have elicited answers that I've never given before. So I'm aware that whoever's placed in front of me becomes a teacher. They think I'm teaching them, but
yes.
I'm pretty aware that it's reciprocal, and that when somebody asks me something, normally I access it from somewhere else, and it comes through me, and I give it to the person asking me, and then I get to keep it as well. So once you get it, you understand that everything is scripture.
Geoff, what does success mean to you?
Success just means working from an authentic place. Okay. Everything else is exponentially secondary. So the money that you earn and any kind of adulation you get or any kind of awards, that's secondary. As a guy as a person that likes to be very honest, I would say that those moments are nice. You win a BAFTA and you go to awards and you go and spend the afternoon with a Hollywood actor. These things are really nice, but there's nothing for me that I like better than lying in bed at night with my wife and she's lying on a pillow watching television and I'm combing my fingers through her hair. That's probably the best part of my day. I sit outside Costa with a coffee and I'll read. At the moment I'm reading The Lightning Stands Still about a guru called Babaji and it's Bliss. So I read a lot. So if I go out there and sit outside and it might be freezing cold and I'll have 3 coats on and I'll sit and read and it's fucking absolute bliss. I sit in Leicester Square. I maybe have a coffee and a croissant. Leicester Square does the best coffee in London.
You don't eat croissants, yeah?
I do. I'm a heathen. And I eat mushroom curry. I am an absolute heathen. Don't follow me. I'll lead you to all the wrong places. Absolutely. Well, all of our intercourses need to be pure. This is a pure intercourse. This is just a pure exchange of energy where an authentic self is talking to an authentic self. And we talked about palette before. This is part of palette for me. What I take in as information, what I receive as information, what I give as information, what I receive as reciprocation is food. That becomes spiritual manna. So if you're on the internet and there's lots of negativity and there's lots of judgment and lots of aggression, that's people are feeding. In esoteric practice, you don't have to scratch far below the surface of the exoteric knowledge to get to the esoteric, and it tells you that is just hungry bears feeding hungry bears. It's just devils feeding devils, egos feeding egos, and there's no control there. There's no control at all. So I only feed from pure wells. And you can only know what a pure well is when you know who you are. And when you know who you are, you start saying, okay, I know exactly what feeds my ego and I know exactly what feeds my soul. So I try to make sure that everything I get just feeds my soul. So I don't really have an internet presence. My son runs my Twitter. He runs my Facebook. He tells me if there's anything I need to know, but I'm not on these places. Because for me personally, it's not the right kind of energy. And I know there's some great people on these things and there's some great information as well. Yeah. But you have to be honest with yourself and think, where do I feel sated? Where do I feel, like I'm inspired? I'm not interested in masturbating over, negativity and judgment. I've done it. I've done all of that, and it just doesn't leave me feeling good. So I just try to go to the places where I know I'm going to get a good soul feed. And that, again, it sounds like it can sound quite, it can sound quite corny Christian, but it's actually very muscular because you have to have the ability, first of all, to discern. Then you have to have the ability to not only to know the field. We talk about the body as the field, but also to master the field and not to take yourself into places that don't serve you. So it takes a very strong presence to be able to do that. So that's part of the practice for me.
I think generally the subject of self-help or self-improvement, self-development, whatever name you want to give it, perhaps by some, is seen as a bit...
Yeah. Yeah, it's corny. It's like a soft option, isn't it?
Corny, definitely. Soft. And it couldn't be further from the truth, could it? Because as we've talked before, actually, to really shine the torch on yourself is the hardest thing to do. Yeah. And we've all got issues and we have all got hang-ups. And anyone who turns around and says, well, I don't have any insecurities is a complete liar. But so Jeff, going back to inspiration, who inspires you? Who keeps you motivated every day? You're going to say Sharon, aren't you?
Not really. I mean, she's like a muse. Sharon's like my muse.
I love
so
that.
She's good. She keeps me grounded. She's the other end of the scale to me. She doesn't talk the same kind of language as me spiritually. But if I go for a walk with her, she comes out with profundities that I won't hear anywhere else. So she keeps me very grounded in a healthy way. when I had my first epiphany, I woke up and I said, Sharon, I've just had an experience with God. And she said, that's really nice, Jeff. What do you want for breakfast? And you need that. Because otherwise you'll float off into the ether. We are in the world, and we need to keep ourselves grounded a little bit. Yeah. So she is definitely a muse for me. Mm-hmm. But I suppose if I'm going to be inspired, I'm inspired by writers. I'm inspired by words, by sounds, actually. I really love, I read some of your stuff when we were doing the writers course, and I just loved your voice. It's a rhythm. There's a rhythm, and it's not just about writing, because lots of people write, but not many people connect to anything, any kind of truth. And I felt real truth in your writing, and what I felt inspired by. So if I read someone like Jim Cartwright, who's probably my favourite writer, it's just so beautiful. The rhythm of his words is so beautiful. Or if you look at someone like Beckett, I've read all of Beckett's stuff. The rhythm of the words is so beautiful, and I can hear this in a pop song. I can hear it in a West End play. I can hear it on an advert. It can come from anywhere. There's no high and low culture for me. It can come from anywhere, and it does. That's right. So I'm interested in words. I'm interested in sounds. I'm interested in the rhythm of the words and the words that come from truth. That's where I want to be. I want to be in that. I want to be in that place where you're listening and thinking, this is truth. And it isn't about it isn't about what somebody's saying. It's about the fact that it comes from a true place. And when it comes from a true place, what they say is that every word is a name of God, every single word. So if you look at the Old Testament, for instance, they said it doesn't matter whether you understand the Old Testament. It doesn't matter whether you understand the words. The original writing was done in a way where all the letters and the words were joined together. So you wouldn't have been able to decipher it. Mm-hmm. When they broke up into sections, every single word was you reciting the name of God, or you reciting something that had come from a true place. Right. So when I'm looking at other people for writing, I'm looking for truth. And when I'm writing myself, I'm looking for truth. And when I get it, I know I've got it. And I can say, that is amazing. There's some scenes in Romans that are just fucking amazing. But I know they're not mine. I know that I received them, and I know that they came through me, and I know that they picked up all of my flavours, but I know they're not mine, so I can be objective about them. So I'm looking for that. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, there was a couple of kids on our course when me and you met, when we did that closure monologue. Yes. And some of it was, God, you could hear a pin drop, couldn't you?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful time.
So that's what, as a writer for yourself and other people, I would encourage you to look for truth. But when you look for truth, you're thinking, fucking hell, I didn't tell the truth because it will offend so many people. But
it'll offend everybody.
But it tends not to. It tends not to. People, when it's pure truth, people tend to receive it as that. When we did Fragile, the Belgrade Theatre was so worried about it that they had the Samaritans at the door every night. One of the reviewers said it's the only play they've ever been to where the Samaritans were at the door, because they were afraid that people would be grossly offended. But because there was so much truth in it, they weren't offended. It was the opposite. Actually, there was a priest come out of it, and he said to me, it was an interesting thing. This priest said to me, a very good play, but I didn't see God in that. And I just thought, well, you're not looking closely enough. What he said, he didn't see his own traditional scripture in there.
Yeah.
But God was in all of it because there was truth in it. It was just about truth. It was an exorcism, and it was an exorcism where all of the audience helped me to process it. It was a really very beautiful, challenging experience. So it's truth. I'm interested in people that write truth, and probably my favourite writer is Jim Cartwright, because he's something about the rhythm of what he does. If you wanted to read something particularly, you could read Road. Okay. Yeah, or he did The Rise and Fall of Little Voice, which I loved. Okay. He did a play called I Licked a Slag's Deodorant, which is pure poetry from the beginning to the end. It's just something very special. Can I tell you this story I had? This is a good idea, a good example of what inspires me. Okay. When I did my first play, I sent it to the Royal Court in London, and they took me into their writers' group. And I was working with them for about 6 months, and one of the lessons they showed us, they said, look, lots of people write. We have thousands and thousands of scripts a year, but we only really receive half a dozen. because we're not looking for people, we're looking for truth, we're looking for a voice, a sound. And in his hand, he had a sheet of papers, and each of those papers was one page of a play from one writer. So there's maybe about 12 different writers there. Mm-hmm. But on the top of the page, it didn't say who the writer was or where the play had come from. He said, I should be able to scatter these pieces of script on the floor, and you should be able to pick them up randomly and know who the writer is just by reading that one page without knowing the play. And the first one I picked up was Jim Cartwright, and his voice. I'd not read the play that it was in, but I knew it was his voice, and I just smiled. Yeah. That's what authenticity is. Right. In your writing, in your life, yeah. In your work, in what you do. If you are authentic and you're working from your original fingerprint, nobody can compete with you, nobody can compare with you, because it is unique, and it's so beautiful that you will attract attention from around the world, because most people are living through personalities, and the personalities have got personalities, and they all lead back to an ego, and beyond that, beyond those 7,000 layers, there is an authentic self waiting to come out, but we don't see it very often.
Very true. Can I just return to something you mentioned previously? You said you weren't particularly fussed about winning an Oscar. Can you clarify that for me?
When I say I'm not fussed about it, I don't mean that I'm not aiming for it.
You're aiming for, okay.
I am aiming for it. I mean, intuitively, I've been told that's what I've got to aim for, because me aiming for something like that will force me into very uncomfortable places and will flush out any parts of me that are not me. Mm-hmm. But what I was trying to say is it's not important. That's what you're aiming for, but that's not what's important. What's important is what you sweat out in order to get there.
I see.
You see what I mean? And even if you get the Oscar and you suddenly, your ego will challenge and try and take hold of that and become pretentious. That, that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to flush out any weaknesses. So the idea of aiming for money or aiming for an Oscar and all that thing, there's nothing wrong with anything like that. I think they're good ambitions, but I follow intuitions, and intuitively I head towards whatever's placed in front of me. That was one of the things that was placed in front of me. Whether I win it or not is not important. Okay. What's important is what I'm able to learn about who I am and who I'm not on the way to getting it. The same with money. Money in itself isn't important. It doesn't even exist. It's a fabrication. But aiming for it and handling it is very good, because it allows you to see who you are. Most people I know who haven't got money won't ever have money because they're afraid of who they might become when they've got money. Whether they'll become lazy, whether they'll become arrogant, whether they'll become unkind people, whether they'll lose their productivity. I mean, Blake, was broke nearly all of his life, and when he was finally offered money to teach the king's children, he turned it down because he was afraid that if he had money, he might lose his edge, might lose his productivity. Right. So I think handling money takes great character, and not many people handle it well, because, as we know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Usually, it doesn't have to, but it's a good challenge. It's a good challenge to have these things, and if you can have an Oscar and have £1 million, but still be able to treat a worm and a cardinal the same, then you're doing okay, I think.
Absolutely. Jeff, what's your legacy to the world?
I think the legacy is just about truth. And someone said to me the other day, but is your truth the same as my truth? And I said, well, I don't know. What is your truth? And she said, well, I'm just saying, if I say that someone sat in a chair here and you don't see that, whose truth is real? And I'm saying, well, all of these things are fabrications. They come from an authentic place. Mm-hmm. So I trace all of these things back. I trace all of these things back to their origin. So my legacy is, if anything, is just saying, be brave enough to work from a place of truth, to work from a place of, these are the things I'm writing. My medium is writing. So I'm saying, am I being as honest as I can be? Am I being as honest as I can be from the right place? Normally the things I put out that's really successful are the things I'm very afraid to write and then very afraid to put out. So I write the things I'm afraid to write, and I put the things I'm afraid to write in front of audiences. And I think if there was a legacy, I would say it would be that, work from truth.
Okay, thank you. And Jeff, where can we learn more about you?
If you go to geoffthompson.com, we've got a Twitter presence and we've got a Facebook presence, and I do a podcast every week. There's hundreds of hours of free material on there. You can go to there, you can learn about me there, and the films I do are there. There's quite a few films on there that are free. So that would be great if you just go to the site. That's brilliant.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today and incredibly thought-provoking. Thank you sincerely for joining us as the first guest on Off the Ropes.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for letting me be the first one. I'm really honoured.
You're welcome. And sincere thanks for listening today. Before you go, a small plea. We want to help as many people as possible discover their potential and overcome any adversity blocking their path. If you feel this episode could inspire someone else, please share it via the social media icons below. And if you're able to leave a review for the Off the Ropes podcast on iTunes, it will help us enormously to coax others to get off the ropes. And finally, if you'd like to receive weekly inspiring conversations drop into your inbox every Sunday night, please subscribe to the Off the Ropes podcast via iTunes or via the website. Thanks again. We wish you an inspiring day.